Howdy, folks. My name is Festus Butterbean, and I'm here to tell you one of them there stories, which Jesus called parables, which he told his followers to convey the new ideas that he meant. Take two. Howdy, folks. My name is Festus Butterbean, and I'm here to tell you one of them there parables, what Jesus used to tell. These were the stories that he used to convey his different meanings and ideas to the people. It all started when this feller, he was an expert on the law, and by that I mean Moses' law. Well, this feller, he asked Jesus, he said, Teacher, what do I got to do to inherit eternal life? Then Jesus asked him, what is written in the law? How do you read it? Well, this law expert fella, he answered Jesus by saying, love the Lord your God with all of your heart and with all of your soul, with all of your strength and with all of your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Well, that's when Jesus told him, you've answered correctly. Do this and you will live forever. Now, this law expert feller, he wanted to justify himself. So he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? Well, that's when Jesus said, there was this feller walking down the road from Jerusalem to Jericho. Well, this poor feller, he was jumped by a bunch of thugs, what robbed him and beat him up and took all his clothes, left him for dead. Right after all this happened, a priest, I'm saying a holy man, came walking down that same stretch of road. Well, this here priest fella saw that other poor fella all beat up and laying in the road, and he just crossed on over to the other side, and he kept on walking. And then, after a couple of minutes went by, would you believe, this other fella, he came walking on down the road. This next fella, he was a Levite. Now, a Levite is a smart feller, the kind of feller what teaches priest stuff. Well, this Levite feller, he sees our poor friend from before, a laying in the road, all beat up and naked. Now, even that Levite fella, he passed this poor soul by and walked on down the road. But the next fella coming down the road, he was a Samaritan. Now, Samaritans were a different kind of Jewish people. At least that's what most other Jewish people thought. But we won't go into that right now. Let me just say that Samaritans weren't looked upon very highly by most other Jews. Well, this Samaritan fella, he came a-walking up to this, saw this poor soul laying in the road, all beat up and naked. He felt sorry for him, and he took pity on this fella. He took that poor traveler, and he bandaged him up and poured oil and wine on his injuries. Then he picked the feller up and put him on his own donkey. Then they went on down the road to an inn, and he fixed up this hurt fella as best he could. The next day, the Samaritan took out a couple of silver coins, tossed them to the innkeeper. Then he said, look after this poor fella, and on my return trip I will pay you back if it costs any more. Then Jesus said to the law expert feller, he said, which of these folks do you think was a neighbor to that poor soul who was beat up and robbed? Well, then that law expert feller, he answered Jesus, the fella who had mercy on him. And Jesus told him, now you go and you do likewise. Well, that's the end of my story for today. Y'all have a good time keeping yourself safe during this quarantine, and God bless you.